Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Remember, you have greatness inside of you. Welcome back to another AB Daily News with your hockey coach guru, Coach FRENCHY. Today, episode number 234 with your new coach today. First of all, I'm going to talk about the resume of Ken Hughes from the press conference yesterday. The ABS trade bait from this press conference. Finally, I'm going to talk about an update about the Montreal Canadiens injuries. We have a bunch of injuries happening. Very bad news, by the way. But before we start talking about all the subject we have today for you, we want to invite you. Don't forget, please, to click on the like, subscribe to our Canadian show, and leave me a comment about this episode. And let's dive in talking about my first subject of the day. My first subject is about the general manager of Montreal Canadiens. 1 year later, he met yesterday the media during a press conference in Brossard. During that press conference, he talked about Samuel Montembeault, Cole Caulfield, JURAJ Slafkovsky, and some news about the trade deadline. Then his philosophy he talked about. He said, win are good, but up to a certain point, and lose are not good, but up to a certain point. He said, we need to have balance. When you talk about balance, guys, yesterday, the words balance in English and the word in French, équilibre, it was used 28 times during the press conference from Ken Hughes yesterday. And balance is not only about one specific area. He talked about everything, the staff management, talking about the coaches staff, the scout staff, the analytic staff, talk about the players for balance for them too. And then he talk about draft balance when he talk about the talent draft and then how they develop the talent they have already and in the future. And the word balance on every area of this organization, it was used a lot by Ken Hughes yesterday during the press conference. Then he add more about the Slafkovsky situation with the Montreal Canadiens, talk about the injury. We know he's going to be out for the rest of the season, but possible he return at the end of April. Ever if the Laval Rocket are still in the playoff, he could join the team during the playoff with the Laval Rocket. And finally, if he's not, he could play in the World Championship 2023. Now, he mentioned about what happening for his progression and the reason why he stay in NHL. First two area, the small rink in North America, he need to Slafkovsky to learn, and then the pace of the speed and the NHL. At the end of this video, I'm going to show to you a resume of Ken Hughes press conference talking about Slafkovsky. So don't miss this. Stay with me until the end of this video. Finally, he talked about Cole Caulfield. He refused to talk about the negotiation. He said, no, I know we should be accountable and transparency about everything happened with the Montreal Canadiens. But when we talk about the negotiation, I would prefer to keep this more private. And when this deal will be done deal, I'm going to give you everything what happening from the beginning to the end. But he said at the end, he said Montreal Canadiens want to keep Cole Caulfield, and Cole Caulfield want to stay with the Montreal Canadiens. It's just a question of agreement for the longevity of the contract and, of course, of the amount of the salary of Cole Caulfield to stay with the Montreal Canadiens. He talked a little bit more about the injuries situation, but he talked about, of course, one more thing, the better decision from the staff medical, the doctors, about the aggravation or about how the player aggravate their injuries when they reestablish at 100%. He talked about the case of Mike Madison, Brendan Gallagher, Joel Edmondson, and Sean Monahan. Said he don't want to blame anybody. They want to figure out why some players, after they think he is ready to play and they aggravate their injury. So there's something they're going to figure out for the next couple of weeks to study more about that situation. Finally, about Samuel Montembeault, he said, look, we love Samuel. He have an amazing, great year so far with us. Listen, he's still young, 26 years old, and we expect him to stay with us. Yeah, no chance we want to trade him at this moment with the Montreal Canadiens. Here we go, guys. This concludes everything what happened during the press conference. We know it was over 44 minutes. I just want to give you a little bit more the headlines of those situations he talked about during the press conference. But before we move on, I would like to hear a little bit more from you. Leave me a comment about what you think about Ken Hughes press conference. And let's move on now for the next subject of the day. The next subject of the day is a little bit follow up with Ken Hughes because he talked about the trade deadline during the press conference yesterday. So now I want to give you a little bit more deeper what he said about the trade deadline about Sven players. First of all, he got a lot of phone calls for Sean Monahan, Joel Edmondson, and Josh Anderson. He said, look, we are really in communication with each player. We tell them what is the plan, what we're looking for, and he's really open up about this. And the player like his communication with them because he showed to them exactly what he tried to accomplish for the future for the Montreal Canadiens. Then he talked about Sean Monahan. Sean Monahan, guys, 12-11-2 when he was with the team. Without him, the team is only 7-12-1. Three teams are maybe looking for Sean Monahan. The Colorado Avalanche, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Dallas Stars. Our three teams are maybe at the top two required to get Sean Monahan. Montreal in return looking for a first-round pick or a prospect already drafted by the team, plus possibly another prospect or a late NHL draft 2023 or 2024. Then I want to talk about the next player, Joel Edmondson. Some team are a little bit concerned about his back. It could be a problem at some point, but still Montreal Canadiens in return, they would like to get a first-round pick and a prospect for Joel Edmondson. Some team are really looking for him. It's Edmonton, Washington, or maybe the top two team who would like to get Joel Edmondson. Then about Jonathan Drouin and Dadonov, they expect Montreal Canadiens to have low in return. And the reason why they may be not to be too much worried about them, where they're going to get a fifth, sixth, seventh round pick, is to drop right now their salary cap for the trade deadline to have a better chance to trade Monahan and Edmondson and maybe possibly to retaining some money on the Sean Monahan trade, and that will open up a little bit more money for the Montreal Canadiens on their salary cap for the rest of the season. The last player I want to talk about, guys, is Josh Anderson. He said, look, we get a lot of phone calls, but at this moment, he's not on the trade bait to make a trade with about him. We really like him. We want to keep him. At least we get something huge in return. Otherwise, we don't see Josh Anderson to go nowhere. This concludes, guys, my second subject of the day. Leave me a comments about the trade bait for the Montreal Canadiens. Who do you believe it could be trade at the trade deadline? Let's move on now, guys, for the last subject of the day. My last subject of the day, guys, about the Montreal Canadiens injuries update. Wow, this was not very good. The list of the injuries is just accumulate more and more every single day. JURAJ Slafkovsky is out for the rest of the season. A long-term injury reserve, unfortunately for him. Following by Jake Evans, he's on the long-term injury reserve, and we expect him to missing about 8 to 10 weeks, with both of them with a problem with their knee. Drouin is out for a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. Same situation with Joel Armia. And Jake Allen, it looked like he will not be ready at least for a minimum of 5 to 10 days to return with the Montreal Canadiens. This does not include other players already. Brendan Gallagher, Caden Cooley, another player with the knee. We have 3 players with problem with their knee at this moment, and Sean Monahan with the foot. And we have to count Paul Biron and Carey Price. This is over 10 players Montreal has right now on the injury list. Then I want to finish this subject with one more thing. It's about Ken Hughes. Talk about JURAJ Slafkovsky developments during the press conference. So what I did, I resumed this question from Eric Angels for the Sportnet, and I want to let you hear what Ken Hughes said about JURAJ Slafkovsky development with the Montreal Canadiens, is progression during the season 2022 and 2023.
I'm glad you asked because, I'll share a little bit of insight on how we see, or think through the development of JURAJ, because I think it's going to, we've got a lot of draft picks that we had last year and that we have coming into the organization and will in the future. So hopefully it'll give a little bit of insight into how we think about it. I don't think that there's any one path developmentally for every player. Right? I think every player comes with a unique set of skills, foundational understanding of the game, and personalities. And I think all of that is relevant in terms of developing a plan for a particular player. In the sport of hockey, I was actually talking to Chantal and Charles about development. I used to do this a lot when we would meet with prospective clients, young clients and families, and they talked about development. Often it was in the form of skating, and I would explain to people that, you know, to try to understand the magnitude of trying to change how you skate, for example, I would use an analogy and say, you know, Eric, I watch the way you walk, and I think your right foot protrudes out and your left foot is in. I'd like you to focus on it, and I'd give you 10 strides, and you could probably focus on it and do it. And if I gave you 3 balls and said I want you to juggle the 3 balls, but I want you to walk the way I asked you to walk, make those changes, it becomes more complicated. If you think of it in the context of hockey, it's like putting you on a highway, saying, I want you to walk the way I told you, juggle the 3 balls and don't get hit by a car. I mean, eventually, you just go to muscle memory, right? So the sport of hockey, skating would be the extreme, but I think the game of hockey, more than any other sport, is so fast, it's so reactive. You go from offense to defense in a split second. You've got responsibilities to the team when you're on, you know, forechecking or whatever not. So it's a very reactive, instinctive game. When you work with a player in terms of changing how they play, and in JURAJ's case, what we're trying to do is to help him understand how he can be most successful here in North America. And that's not necessarily natural to him. So we believe his development will happen in stages. It's not, hey, we've got 10 things, go figure them out, because I think when you do that, you're on the ice thinking and you're not reacting. And I think sometimes this year we've seen him think on the ice, and other times we've seen him react. But we're not worried about the production side of it. We're really worried about seeing the areas that we want him to improve on. Do we see progress in those areas? Because we know, or we certainly believe, that long term, if he makes these changes to his game, it's going to allow him to adapt to the North American style and be the most successful player he can be.
Here we go, guys. It was Ken Hughes talking about JURAJ Slafkovsky, about his progression. I just want to share with you about the resume of Ken Hughes during the press conference yesterday at Brassard. This concludes, guys, all the subject I have for you for this episode. That's it, my friend. Great episode 234 for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy it. But before we leave, we invite you, please don't forget to click on the like, subscribe to our Canadian show, and leave me a comment about this episode. Yes, the Florida Panthers play tonight against Montreal Canadiens at the Bell Center. Yes, I'm going to do a play-by-play. I invite you to join us at 7 o'clock p.m. for this play-by-play commentary with your hockey coach, FRENCHY. Remember, you have greatness inside of you. And, of course, I wish you an amazing, blessing, thankfully Thursday day, everybody.